Hi guys, thank you for coming back. I know today's like a really small class, but we will be talking about something really important, which is the foundation of creating Android apps. So basically, we will be teaching you about how to create any sort of views in Android. And Kevin will be taking over the lecture portion.
Hello. Suppose we're starting the lecture now. Full class today. All right, so today we're talking about views and layouts. Why they're important, how to use them, and what we're going to be doing with them in Android. Announcements. All right, so homework 1 was due yesterday, March 1st. The late deadline will be at the end of this week. If you're currently not enrolled in Student Center, please come talk with us after class. There are some issues we're dealing with right now. We didn't quite realize exactly when the ad deadline was, and well, we're currently working out the issues with all the rest of the other active courses. Homework 2 will be released after this class, and it's also due on the 8th of March. All right, so let's first talk about the file structure of resources and for activities. So the parts of an activity, there are just two of them. Well, two simple parts. There's the layout files, the XML files that define how the activity will look. Those are located in app resources layout. Then there are the program files for coding up the activity and the logic behind it. Those are in Java, com, example app name, and then your stuff. Note that even if you were coding in Kotlin, it still falls into the Java folder. It always falls into the Java folder. Yeah, so you have your activity, you have the XML behind it, and you have the Java code behind that. So the XML structure is like a hierarchical tree. How many of you have done HTML programming? Yeah, so if you've done a bit of HTML, you'll know how HTML works. It's like a tree. You start with the body on the outside, and it just goes inwards towards the smaller components inside. So it's similar to HTML in that respect. It has attribute tags. So each and every thing in it has a bunch of attribute tags that define how it's going to look on screen. So here's the frame layout. Wow, that is dim. Can all of you see that? If that's a no, then I'm just going to dim the lights a bit. Better? Better? Yes. Awesome. Okay, so here are all the tags inside the frame layout. So it has tags for how wide it's going to be, how high it's going to be. And then you'll notice that the text view has an additional tag, Android.id. So the ID tag is how you find parts of a layout inside your code. So your ID tags allow Java to define the object. So text view display r.id text view. Cool. So view groups. View groups are, well, self-explanatory. They are groups of views. They hold other views inside them. You have the linear layout, which is really light on performance. It's one of the oldest layouts out there, super commonly used, especially in industry because of how precise and just generally easy to use they are. They do that. You put things in them, and they go 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever you need them to do. Either horizontal or vertical. You set the spacing with the special attributes for linear layout that Leslie will be demoing, and from there, you just, yeah, they just work. You have relative layout, which is fairly computationally expensive, allows for two-dimensional relative positioning, so you can put something to the right of another view. That way you can see that way something can be positioned both in the X and the Y direction in relation to other parts on the view. You can move all the elements in it by using Android gravity and then just putting them all to one side or the other, down or up. However, relative layout is pretty much dead in favor of constraint layout. So you'll find this in the legacy folder on your view editor. Google retired it. It's pretty much gone. This is the new one, ConstraintLayout. It's relatively performant. It has better flexibility. You can constrain it to its surroundings by choosing constraints inside the XML and pointing it at either the parent, other parts of the layout, and that's what it's going to bind to. And then you give it room to breathe using margins, which actually can be used in any layout. You can give it margins against something to space things out and to give things some room for error. So this is Google's favorite child. They're blasting this everywhere. They're using this as their example for most code they do, most apps they make. So if you need to position things a lot along a screen, make it responsive, make it work on every screen, try this one. Probably will work. You have FrameLayout, which is for layers, in case you want things in front of other things. A frame layout, you can put a view on top of a view on top of a view. So you can get the stuff like in Google Maps where a part slides over the map and the map doesn't change size or anything because it's in the background. This is what FrameLayout's for. It's often used as a container for fragments. More about that in Lecture 5. And then there's ScrollView, RecyclerView, and ListView. They scroll. You can dynamically modify them, like YouTube dropping in new videos for you. You can hit the refresh and new videos will pop up. Memory efficient. They will like restore things and put them in the memory and whatnot, and they are complicated and have a lot of functional parts in the code, so we're going to be covering them next time. Yeah, sorry. They're fun though. So there are more input controls than right. Wow, okay. Hold on. These got rearranged. All right, so there are more input controls. Yeah. So here are some views for input controls. You have edit view. I'm sorry, I was supposed to say edit text. The edit text is a box that will give you a space to input text, input characters, either strings, numbers, whatnot. This is what you'll use for either a search bar or or entering in a password for like a login stage. You have seek bar, which is used to represent a range of inputs. You can slide them to one side or another. This is what your volume controls are used for. This is what the media controls are used for. You have checkboxes, self-explanatory. Radio groups and radio buttons are these instead. These, you can select only one of them in the group. Therefore, they have to have two views. They have the radio group and the radio button, radio box, which is what they use to figure out which sets of them can be selected at a time. You have switches, which you can use to enable, disable functions. Settings. If you have an app that needs settings, switch. And then spinners, which is what you use to select an item from a list. This is often used if you're these are things you use in forms. These are things you'd find for various different parts where you need to select settings, select, I suppose in this case, contacts would be a good one for that set. So how would you implement a button, the easiest one that we did last time already? Well, you implement a button by putting in the XML some code that says, here's a button, here's how wide it is, here's how tall it is, and this is what we're calling it. And then you might give it some more attributes like color. You might custom define a shape of a button that will look different than the default Android button. And then you'll go into your activity and find your button. You have to find it from your layout that you're using at the moment, and then give it an on-click listener to do something when it clicks. There is an attribute in there that says on-click, and then you can have that target a method. That's often not recommended, for it triggers some weird things if it doesn't happen. And then, so other listeners follow the same format. You give them a listener to do X with. So in this case, here's an edit text. Here is where you enter a password. And there you give it an add text change listener. And then you can use new, and then it'll just automatically start importing in a bunch of different methods that you have to that have to be in there for it to detect things. You'd often use onTextChange to find out when someone's done entering a piece of text, and then you have to modify that. How you often find these things is that you just go, you take whatever your button, your view, whatever, and then you just do a dot, and then start looking up add, set, whatnot, and then use Android Studio's amazing autocorrect features to like help you figure out what to fill in. Android Studio will take a lot of the heavy lifting off you from like looking up documentation or whatnot, but generally there's also a bunch of documentation for this kind of stuff on the web. A bit more about the resource files, because you'll use a lot of these in creating the layouts. So in creating the layouts, you have drawables, which is the custom images and icons for the app to be displaying. Here is where, let's say, Eatery will put up like little icons of if it's, here's where Eatery would have like a green icon, a blue icon, or whatnot to tell you if it's BRB ready or what's not. And then fonts for custom font files. The default font in Android that Android uses is called Roboto. You might not like that font. You might want a serif font if you're doing stuff for like a newspaper, right? And you want it to have like those curly edges and whatnot. You might use Comic Sans if you had bad taste, or if you was trolling your the people you're working with. And you can just put those in the custom font files. Layout is, again, where you put all the layout files. Mipmap contains icon images. This is where generally the icon of the app goes. And then raw contains raw audio and video media that you might be able to play during the course of your app. So if it plays a sound on this, if it does extra stuff on that. Snapchat probably has a lot of stuff in raw where they just have a bunch of video files and video like filters that you can just drop onto your snaps. And then values contain reusable files. Values for colors, dimensions, strings, and styles. Excuse me. So this is one thing that Android Studio might give you warning icons on. If you hard code text into the layout, for some reason that's against Android standard. You're supposed to be putting them inside strings, inside colors. You shouldn't be things that you reuse often. Like if you use a primary color in your app a lot, one that goes throughout the app, you put the color once into colors and then just reuse the name of the color inside your XML files. Yeah, so you'd use it this way. So if you have a primary and an accent color, you'd put those inside your colors.xml, inside resources, and then just keep reusing them. That way, this is not so that, this is so that it's easy to develop the app in the first place because you can just color primary. But in the meantime, this is also something that you can change once and it changes everywhere. So if you change color primary once in colors.xml, everywhere else in the app, that changes. Therefore, if you make a design decision that you don't quite like and you want to change it in the future, this makes it that much easier. Is that it? Huh. All right, we're at the end of the presentation. Leslie, feel free to start your demo.
Okay, so if you have your laptops, you can go ahead and open up Android Studio. So we're just going to be creating a project from scratch. So let me also pull it up as well. I'm just going to wait a little bit for people to pull it up.
A moment. I'm just going to give them some. Do you guys want some light so you can see your computers or no? Yes, no.
Is it a little bit? Give a little bit.
What? I don't know if there's a little bit. There is just front dark seats lit. Sorry.
Are you guys still able to see?
Do you guys prefer this or do you want it back to dark?
I prefer it off. Okay.
Prefer it off?
Turn it back off.
And lights off. 3, 2, 1.
Kind of like it's very intimate. Okay, so if you guys are ready, if you're on this page, we're going to go ahead and create a new project. It's the same thing as last time. We're going to create an empty activity. It's really nice. I do have like other templates over here, but then what I found was that if you don't really understand a lot of how Android code works, sometimes I feel really afraid of like changing code in some of the template activities. just because you don't know if you're breaking something that's important, you're deleting something that you might need later. So go ahead and create empty activity. We're just going to call it lecture 2 demo. And then we're going to make sure the language is Java. I think we set it to Kotlin. It's a little hard to set back. And then we're going to set it to API 23. That's just generally what I set it to. And then normally we can change it if we find out we need something higher or lower. So go ahead. This is live? Okay. So I'm just gonna wait until the project is loading. If I'm going through the demo too quickly, feel free to like stop me or like tell me to slow down. So you'll see here that we have a few files already created for us. Why are there no configurations? Okay, so you'll see that we have the activity file. They already created XML file for us. It's all loading.
In the meantime, how was the first assignment for you all? Good? Good? Had fun with it? Yep, we got some more exciting things coming for assignment 2. So, yeah.
Do you guys generally find it to be like too easy, or did you find it to be a good overview of Android Studio? Oh. Okay.
Cool.
How long does this take to load?
As long as it takes to index. You guys still also loading, or are you all done?
It's just you.
Yeah, it's just my computer.
Okay, so it finally showed up. Nice. So this might look a little different than you have. But on the side, if you have the older version, you want to click. There's something over here called Preview. You want to click that. But for now, I just want to click the middle icon.
How do I just shrink it into a window?
No, I think this is fine. Or, okay, so you'll see they already gave us a constraint layout, and then this is really nice because you can see like the 2 views on the side. So then when you're editing code, you'll know what it looks like while you're editing it, and you don't even have to run the code. So we're gonna create a very, very basic like color generator app. This will be sort of a good intro to the homework. The homework will definitely be a little bit more complex. So we're gonna go ahead and delete text view right here. And you can see that when we delete it, it also deletes it on the preview. So that's really cool. A lot of code up here, you'll like see all these like different links. For right now, like you don't have to worry too much about them. Just know that they are sort of like kind of like ways to import like tools that we can use in the XML file. This context right here allows us to know that this layout is associated with main activity. So what we're going to do is that we're going to create a simple square to hold the color. So I'm going to create a view. And then we're going to type in like the arrow view and just click enter. And it should already autofill with the width and height. Let's just do something like, let's just try something like 200 px, right? And then let's try 200 px here. So you'll notice that they'll have like a little yellow, it's highlighted in yellow, and it'll give us a warning that says, avoid using px as units. So oftentimes Android Studios will give you warning if you're not doing something that is following the Android guidelines. So generally we don't want to use pixels because different devices can have different pixel sizes across like the width and the length. So we want to be using DP instead. This is basically, it takes a ratio between the screen size and also the number of pixels it has. And so if you use DP, your layout is more likely to be more uniform across all sorts of platforms, or all sorts of devices. So we're going to go ahead and delete that.
DP stands for density pixel, so it's a pixel based on the density of the screen's pixels, so a variable pixel size.
Okay. So we changed it back to DP. You can see the square on the side. Now we want to center it. For constraint layout, centering is kind of cool. You don't use gravity and you don't use like margins. We use something called just like constraint. And so you would just do app : and then you type in constraint. Let's see, constraint. You'll see a lot of them here that are like constraint bottom to bottom up, or like constraint bottom to top up. So basically, we want to constraint the start and end of this layout. And start in constraint layout is the left side, and then end is the right side. So let's do constraint start of, and we'll do parent, and then app constraint end of parent. So this is a really nice trick that helps you center all layouts in the constraint layout. And we also want to add a little padding at the top. So let's just constrain it to the top as well. Constraint top of, also parent. And then we're going to add a little margin. So margin top, and let's do like 100 dp. Okay, that looks pretty good. And then we also want to set an ID to this because we do want to refer to it in the Java code. So we're going to do Android ID equals at plus, this adds the ID, and let's just do like color square. Okay, and now we're going to add the button. So I'm going to go ahead and do caret button and just click enter, and it'll autofill again with width and height. This time I'm going to do wrap content. So match parent basically matches the width and height of the element to the actual parent is in. So in this case, it would be the constraint layout. So I did something like match parent. You'll see that a button kind of just takes up the entire screen because it's trying to match the parent of the constraint layout. But we'll be doing wrap content. So this just sort of changes the height and width to the size of the content inside. Add an ID as well. Let's do at plus ID equals to random. And then let's also set the text inside. So let's do Android text equals to randomize. Okay. So you'll notice here that there's another yellow highlight, and it's warning us that oh, it's not actually giving me a warning. Okay, so basically it's warning us that we shouldn't be hard coding text inside the XML file. We should be doing it in the strings file, like what Kevin said. So we're going to go to values, strings, and we're just going to add the string in here. So string equals to button text. And now in the XML file, we can call it by doing, and you'll see it shows up button text. And it shows up here, it says randomize. I would say that normally when you're making apps for yourself or for just like a hackathon project or for something small, like you wouldn't normally use a strings XML file. It's more just like an architecture and like styling thing, but you will find that as you're making more complex apps, it is important that you put the strings inside a strings.xml file so that if you're using the string in more than one place, you can just change it in a singular place and all the strings will change uniformly. So we also want to constrain this. Let's see, we want to put a button underneath the square right here. So let's center it first. So Android.constraint is app constraint start to start. Parent, and then app.layout, constraint, and parent. So now I see the button is centered. And we're also going to constrain the button to the bottom of the app. So let's see, constraint bottom to bottom parent. Okay, let me add a margin as well. Margin bottom is 100 dp. Okay, and then let's give this square a color, a temporary color for now, so we will just see it when we first launch the app. So let's do Android back background, and then we can do @color, and then you should be able to pick between these three. They might just be random colors for you. I'm going to go ahead and pick color accent. You'll see that it changes. And let's quickly run this app so we'll see how it looks on the emulator. Or maybe it is a bad idea. I'm just going to wait. Okay, so let's just go ahead and keep coding while we wait for the emulator to show. But you guys can probably see the app on your own emulator. And hopefully it looks just like what we see in the preview here. So we're going to go ahead and code, we're going to add functionality to the button so that the color of the box changes every time we click on it. So we're going to go to main activity. You'll see here, the line that's really important is set content view. This basically sets the layout XML that is displayed for this activity. Later we'll be changing this into a different layout. But for right now, we'll need to declare all the different UI elements we're going to be needing in the code. So one of them is view. Let's do view color square, and the other one is okay, so now I see that view is red, and a really quick way to import it is just Alt-Enter. And then automatically, you'll see here, there's automatically an import statement for the view. We're also going to add a button, so let's do button, Alt-Enter. Oh my god. Okay, let's go back. And then now we need to set the ID to the actual objects, the view and button, so that they know like which UI elements they're referring to. So we're really going to quickly do square, let's see, color square equals define view by ID, r.id dot, let's see what shows up, color square. And same with the button. Oh, it looks like we didn't set an ID for the button, I think. No, we did. Okay. Let's do random set. And then we're going to create an on-click listener. This was also shown in the last demo, so I'm going to go through it kind of quickly. So we just set on-click listener. You'll see there's a lot of options that show up, and I'm just going to pick the first one. And the general format is just new, and type in view.onClick. And it'll show up. You click enter. Oh, why did it not do it? Okay. And you click enter, and it should automatically populate with the function you need to override, which is onClick. So we're just gonna do, if you click on it, then we're gonna change the color square dot set background. Is that right? Might be not set background. Yeah, set background color. Okay, so that's wrong. So it should be set background color. And then now we're going to use the color class dot RGB. So see here that like there's a lot of different ways to use color in Android. I know that personally I want to use RGB because I can only deal with integer values right now. And so if you type in RGB, you see there will be a lot of like different methods that you can use. And then so it's really nice because Android will tell you exactly what methods are available plus the parameters that you need. And this will be really useful in the homework when you're trying to figure out what methods you need to use in the color class. So we're going to use the first one, which takes in 3 integers. And then these are going to be random numbers. So let me go ahead and import color. And I'm also going to create a random variable. Random. And let's just do, I need to import it. Random equals to random dot next int. Oh my god, that's so scary. I did not need that. Okay, I don't know what that was. Okay. Yikes. Okay, and then so we know that for colors, in terms of RGB, the largest value is 255. So we're going to set the bound to 256 here, and that should get us a new random number. And so inside this RGB, I guess we want the random number to change. So actually, we'll just copy and paste this, and I'm just going to put it 3 times for red, green, and blue. And then let me delete. Yeah, I'll delete it. And then we can go ahead and comment this out. Okay, let's go ahead and run it, and hopefully it'll show up in the emulator.
More of the amusing thing is math.random gives you an int from 0 to 1, so we exactly what the float one wanted. There was a float one that went from 0 to 1, 0 to 1, 0 to 1. And that's exactly what math.random gives you, a value from 0 to 1. So if you just put that in 3 times, it would have worked.
Okay. Okay, so now you see here, if we click on it, it should change and randomize color. So this is really cool. This is a good, I guess like a very, very basic app. But we did use ConstraintLayout in our XML, and that's like one of the layouts that you can use. I personally don't like using ConstraintLayout only because I started coding for Android before ConstraintLayout came out. So we can go ahead and actually create, we can actually recreate the same layout using a different view group. So I'm going to go back into my file editor, and I'm going to go into layout and just create a new, I'm just going to create a new XML file. So you go to new layout resource file, and let's just name it activity underscore main underscore 2. And then they already put constraint layout, but it's okay. We'll get rid of it. Okay. So we go back into code. I'm going to go ahead and change this to linear layout. And let's see what variables are given. Okay, match parent, match parent. So linear layout is very interesting because you need to set orientation. It can either flow horizontally or vertically. We're going to have this one flow vertically. Orientation, vertical. And then we're going to do the same thing where we create a view. And then we'll just do maybe like 200 dp. Is that what we did here? Let's see. 200 dp. And then set the same ID. And then here, instead of using constraints to center it, for linear layout, we use something called gravity. So there's layout gravity, and let's just do center horizontal. That should center it. String margin, let's do margin, add in margin top, 100 dp. Nice. And then we'll really quickly create the button again. Content. And then we'll add ID. This ID equals a random button and Android text. And this time, because we know we already set the text in the strings.xml file, we can just go ahead and call it. So we decided to change the string. It will be the same thing. We also need to set the layout gravity for this one as well. I'm going to add a margin to the top. So what's really nice about linear layout is that it automatically sort of like fills in the views for you, just horizontally or vertically, depending on orientation. So it's not like constraint layout where you have to set all the constraints, make sure that it's like centered, make sure that it's a constraint to the bottom or the top. So that's why I personally really like linear layout. And you'll find that linear layout is really useful. Oh, you have a question? Sorry.
Yeah.
Hmm?
Okay, so like, is creating like a different
Yeah, so then in this case, I'm just showing you that you can create the exact same layout using two different types of view groups. So we're going to try to create the same layout using both ConstraintLayout and LinearLayout. This is not actually creating a separate screen. It's creating like two different types of screens that you can like put in and out. You're creating different types of screens when you're creating different activities or different fragments.
In this case, you did create a different activity. So.
No, this is just the XML file.
Oh, you just created a second XML file to do
yeah.
this. Okay, so if you normally just create a new activity by just right-clicking here, and then going to New, and then an activity, yes, you would be creating a second page, per se, right? You would be creating, say, if you, Snapchat, good example. They have their main camera page, they have their settings page, they have their friends page. Those would all be different activities that would go in and out. Yeah.
Yeah. But in this case, we're just creating, it's just one screen, but now we're just supplementing like different XML files into it. So it looks almost the same. And then so the next step is that in here, the line I talked about before, set content view, this actually sets the layout for the view. So we can differentiate the difference by saying like maybe we'll use a different text. Let's change it into maybe like, let's see, let's create a second text for this. Strings. Name equals button. Oh, hello. I say it kind of comes up to like personal preference. For me, linear layout is really useful for like table-like views when there's a lot of lists. So for example, maybe you're looking at like eatery. You would need a linear layout because you're linearly showing the different card views, and a lot of the words also like move across horizontally. Constraint layout is really nice because it's very flexible. You can kind of like do whatever, you can add whatever you want on a page. You're not constrained by sort of like one sort of flow. It really comes to personal preference. There's also like frame layout, table layout that I use a lot. You can also technically use relative layout, but it is deprecated. But I also do find it very easy to use.
So it's like if you had a page, right, that had something up here, like a big screen up here with a map, and then a list of things underneath, right? You could go about it by doing constraint layout, right? Which you put one thing up here and then you bind everything beneath it relative to everything else, right? But that might get messy, and depending on how it goes, you might get things that start getting misaligned because they weren't part of the same view. That is where something like linear layout and grouping views into those piece chunks would come in, so that they always stay aligned with each other the way you want it to be. So it's down to personal preference. It's down to linear layout is faster in general, but it's like constraint layout is ridiculously convenient for getting things into the right spots relative to each other generally. Right? But it's like if you're doing alignment and list like things, you might want to use some more straightforward boxy layouts.
Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and create another text. Let's do button text 2, and let's just put new button text. And then in our XML, we're gonna change this to button text 2. So in this case, I think we rerun it. Oh wait, oh my god, I didn't change. So we're gonna go ahead and change set view content. We're gonna change the XML file that we called from. Okay, and then let's go ahead and we're gonna wait a little bit. If you guys rerun it, you'll see that now the button text has changed, but the functionality should be exactly the same. Okay, let's change it. And so, yeah, in this case, we're not actually creating two separate screens. We're just creating different layouts, so we're supplementing in and out of this activity. Generally, you don't want to be switching XML layouts in a singular activity. You normally just like hide things, or you just change them as you're coding. But this is just kind of to show you that you can potentially just like switch out the layout, and it's fine. So it might be really good for like refactoring if you don't want to like mess with a current layout file. You can just create a new one and just like put it in the end. Okay, now I'm going to show you sort of, let's see. maybe a good thing to show is visibility. Visibility is really important because it's really good for creating very dynamic layouts. So let's say, for example, we're going to go back to our constraint layout, activity underscore main XML, and I'm just going to set the visibility to gone. So now the square should be hidden. So it could be that like maybe we don't want the user to see the square in the beginning before we press a button, because it doesn't make sense to have a color square when we haven't pressed a button yet. And so in main activity, we're going to switch back the two to just regular activity.main inside set content view. And then now we need to make sure that the square shows up when we press the button. So we can do color square dot. Wait, oh my god, I spelled square wrong. That was so yikes. It's okay, guys. Let's see. Let's do set visibility. So you'll see here that when you press dot, and then you'll just see like a ton of different methods you can use. And so this is really nice because you'll never be able to memorize all the different methods you can use. And then one good way to figure out sort of what you can use is just like click dot and just like start typing in like what you need. So maybe like if you want to do something related to color, you can type in color. And you'll see there are a lot of methods related to color. But in our case, we want visibility. So I'm going to quickly type visibility. And then, oh, I guess not. Let's see. Set visibility. Okay, set visibility, that's it. And we're going to do view.visible. Visible. Okay. And so we rerun this. Yeah, so we rerun this, we'll see that currently the square is gone, but when we press the button, it shows up. And so visibility is really nice because you can hide certain things when you don't want to see them. So for example, in Eatery, inside the weekly menu page, we hide a lot of different views about the menu, and when you click on a certain dining hall, the menu will pop up. So that's actually using visibility, where we're setting it to gone and setting it to visible. And then since we have some time left, I'll really quickly go over how you can have different layouts within layouts. So this is how you create very complex views. So we're going to go ahead into our second XML file. And we're going to create another linear layout. So we're going to do a linear layout. Let's do width, match parent, height. Let's do wrap content. Okay. And make sure there's a sandwich like this where there is a beginning and end, because we'll be putting stuff inside this linear layout. And then I'm going to set the orientation to horizontal. Orientation, horizontal. Okay. So basically here I want to create 3 separate squares that represents like 3 separate square colors. And so I'll just be copying, pasting the code that we wrote below into here 3 times. Seems like they're a little large, so I'm gonna do 50 dp, 50 dp. And you'll see here that there are red lines for the ID. This is because you can't set the same ID for different UI elements. The reason why I didn't have a red line before was because we're using this ID in a different file, so it didn't throw an error. But because it's all in the same file, we're going to have to set these to different IDs. Okay. Now I'm going to go ahead and delete the margin top from here. And then I'm going to delete the gravity as well. And let me set a margin for the second oh my god. Let me set a margin for the second linear layout. So margin top, 100 dp. So you'll see that the squares are all crowded in the corner here, but we do want them to be spread out. So another really cool UI attribute is called weight. So you can set them to be percentages of the screen width or length. It kind of depends on the orientation you're in. So now that we're in a horizontal orientation, we're going to set the width based on the horizontal percentage. So we're going to do Android weight sum equals to 1. That means the entire screen has a weight of 1. And we're going to set the views to have a weight of 0.2. Weight 0.2. Okay, so you can see here that it just like spreads out. And because we're using weight, we do want to be changing the width to 0 because we don't want two different factors be affecting the measurement of the squares. So we're going to set all the width to 0. Okay. And then we still need spaces in between. So something that I like to do is I like to just add extra views to create spaces. And so I will create here. They don't need an ID. We're going to set their weight to 1. And we're just going to copy and paste it in between all our color squares. Let's set the height. Okay, that should be fine. So that just means that now in our main activity, we'll be needing to change the code. So let's set it back. Let's set the layout back to layout 2. Now that we have 3 squares, we'll have to recreate all 3 views again. So square 2, the view color square 3, and then we also have to set the view to the ID. So color square 2 equals to find view by ID r dot color square 2. The first one's going to be 1, and then color square 3 equals to find view the ID r dot. So you can kind of see that it's already getting a little crowded just because we are like first creating all the objects up here, and then we're setting all the views down here. So you can imagine that in a very complex view, you just have like a very long list of kind of like what happens in Android when you are creating complex views. We will be teaching you how to create maybe like fragments or kind of separate the activities into different portions so that you won't have such a large file that's very crowded. So we're going to do the same thing here. We're just going to copy this line of code, and then we're just going to copy it 3 times. Just comment out this line of code here, and then 2. Okay, so let's go ahead and run it. Let's see. Oh my god, what happened to our emulator? Okay, well I don't know what happened to our emulator, but hopefully it runs on your emulator. Oh. And I do know it is the end of class. So this is sort of like a way to show you that you can have very complex views by having nested view groups. You can also use different view groups to create the exact same layout. The UI element that you will be needing in homework is a seek bar. A seek bar acts a little differently than a button in that the click listener is a little different. There are different methods. So if you look at a seek bar real quick, seek bar. Let's do this. I know it's almost time. Yeah. So if you just do set on seek bar listener new on seek bar listener, you'll see that it comes with 3 different methods that you have to override. You don't have to override all of them. You can leave some of them blank, but you will be needing to do a little bit of research to understand which methods you need to change to be successful in the homework. And that's sort of designed on purpose because a lot of times in Android development, you don't memorize how to kind of like change everything. You are expected to like do research and kind of figure out what resources you need to like create the views you want. Yeah, but thank you for coming to our second lecture. We'll be releasing the homework very soon. I'm sorry for going a little overboard. Yeah, seems good.
Yes, because, okay, so here's the thing. It automatically types bound here. Like, it gives you, it tells you that that's a bound.
Mm-hmm.
So actually,
Oh.
that's what it
Right.
does.
Mhm.
Yes.
You of all people should spell square right.
I know, I'm so sad. Wait, actually, no! Feels bad.
Okay, turn off the recording before I have to crop it.
Wait.
Uh-oh.
Wait, you're so right.